Grimm's fairy tale. Reading out another fairy tale from this book, Grimm's Fairy Tale. Really, as kids, I think I was just 7 or 8 when my dad got it, and I still enjoy reading it. So, one of the stories I'm going to read at page 84, The Shoes That Were Danced into Holes. Once upon a time, there was a king who had 12 daughters, each more beautiful than the others. They slept together in a hall where their beds stood close together in a row, and every night when they lay in them, the king locked and bolted the door. In the morning, when the door was unlocked, he saw their shoes had been danced into holes, and it was a mystery how this had happened. The king issued a proclamation to the effect that whoever could find out how the shoes were danced into holes in the night should have one of the 12 sisters for his wife and succeed to the throne after his death. But whoever undertook to solve the mystery and had not done so in 3 days and 3 nights should forfeit his life. Soon afterwards, a prince announced his readiness to attempt the solution of the problem. He was courteously received and in the evening led into a room adjoining the hall. A bed was made up there, and he was to watch who went in and danced in the sleeping apartment of the 12 sisters. Unfortunately, the prince's eyelids soon felt heavy, and he went off to sleep. When he awoke in the morning, it was clear that all 12 sisters had been to a dance, for there were holes in all the shoes. The second and third night he fared no better, and his head was ruthlessly cut off. After that, several more princes and noblemen came, but all met the same fate and lost their heads. Then it happened that a poor wounded soldier was passing through the town, and when an old woman asked him what he was doing there, he replied in jest, "I have half a mind to offer myself as a spy on the 12 princesses and see where they go to dance their shoes in holes every night, and then to become king for my trouble." The old woman took him seriously and said, "It is not so difficult as you suppose. All you have to do is not to drink the wine brought to you at night and to sham being sound asleep." Thereupon she gave him a little cloak and said, "If you throw this over you, you will become invisible and can glide after the 12 maidens and see where they go." The soldier, on hearing this advice, went in for the ventures in good earnest and let himself be announced as a suitor. He was received with as much politeness as his predecessors and given royal raiment to put on. At bedtime, he was led into the antechamber and was getting into bed when the eldest daughter brought him a goblet of wine. He did not drink a drop of it, but let it all soak into a sponge he had tied under his chin. He then lay down and after a few minutes began to snore as if he were in a deep slumber. The 12 princes heard his snores, and the eldest said he too might have spared his trouble and his life. Then they got up, opened wardrobes, drawers, and boxes out of which they took lovely dresses, and they decked themselves before their looking glasses, skipping gaily about, overjoyed at the prospect of their dance. The youngest seemed slightly depressed and said, "I don't know why you are all in such high spirits. I, for my part, feel as if some misfortune were hanging over us." "You absurd goose," said the eldest. "What is there to be afraid of? Don't you remember how many royal people have tried in vain to find out our secret? I have given the soldier a sleeping draught like I gave the others, and you may depend the lout won't wake." When they were all ready to start, they looked at the soldier and saw that his eyes were shut and that he lay perfectly still. So they imagined everything was all right. The eldest went to the head of a bed and knocked on it. Immediately it sank through the floor, and they climbed down the opening one after the other, the eldest leading the way. The soldier who had watched their movements now rose, flung on his cloak, and followed at the heels of the youngest. In the middle of the staircase, he stepped on her dress, and she exclaimed in a great fright, "Who is that? Someone caught hold of my dress." "Don't be so silly," said the eldest. "You only caught it on a hook." And they went on till they reached the bottom. There they stood under a magnificent avenue of trees, the leaves of which were gold and silver, all flashing and gleaming. The soldier thought, "You had better take a leaf as a witness," and broke off a twig. The tree creaked, and the youngest sister called out, "Something's going to happen. Didn't you hear that noise?" But the eldest again silenced her. "That was firing. Our princes are firing salutes to welcome us." And now they came to an avenue where all the trees had leaves of diamonds, and the soldier broke off a twig, and there was another tremendous crack. The younger sister jumped from fear, but the eldest insisted that the noises were only salutes. Next they came to a lake on which 12 boats were at anchor, and in each was a charming young prince. They were waiting for the 12 princesses, and when they came, they paired off together. The soldier followed the youngest, and in a few minutes her prince remarked, "How is it that the boat seems so much heavier tonight? It is all I can do to move it." "It is because the weather is so hot," suggested the youngest princess. "I can hardly breathe." On the other side of the lake stood a beautiful castle, brilliantly lit up, and from it came the sound of music. They all landed and entered together, and the couples danced, and the soldier dancing invisibly. Whenever they stopped to refresh themselves with wine, he emptied the goblet just as they were lifting it to their lips. This frightened the youngest princess, but as usual the eldest silenced her. So they danced on till 3 o'clock in the morning, and by the time all their shoes were in holes, and they were obliged to leave off. When they reached the staircase again, the soldier slipped in front and went back to bed. And as the sisters were lagging footsteps, tired and yawning, came into their apartment, they were already snoring as loudly as he was already snoring as loudly as ever. They took off their lovely frocks, put them away, kicked their shoes under their beds, and lay down. The next morning the soldier did not say anything, but watched the same spectacle the second and third nights. Everything happened just the same, and the princesses danced and danced till their shoes were almost in pieces. The third time he took as evidence of what he had seen a goblet instead of a twig from the trees. When the hour arrived when he was to go to the king, he put the twigs and the goblet under his coat. The 12 girls stationed themselves behind the door to listen to what passed. In the answer to the king's question, "Where have my daughters danced their shoes into holes during the night?" he replied, "In an underground castle with 12 princes," and he produced his evidence. Thereupon the king ordered his daughters to come before him and asked whether the soldiers spoke the truth. Seeing that they were found out and that it would be useless to deny anything, they confessed. Then the king said, "Which of my daughters will you choose for your wife?" And the soldier answered, "As I am not so very young, I'll have the eldest." So their marriage was celebrated, and the soldier inherited the kingdom. So that's the story of the shoes that were danced into holes.